Samurai 8, Chapter 19, Whatever It Takes. A fantastic chapter. So much fun to be had in this one, and I'm really enjoying the development of this arc so far, and the addition to the cast that we have with Kotsuga and Ryuu. I mean, it's really great work by Kishimoto and Okubo here, and I just can't wait to see more. So let's get into it. So it opens up with us seeing the planet that likely the tournament is going to be held on, and we see like a big slash in it. And I assume that this is indicating that the samurai, the holder of the tournament, did this because it was stated that he is powerful enough to slice a friggin' planet in half. So this was likely his doing. And also we see a satellite planet / moon next to it. And it has like an odd infrastructure to it, kind of like a Death Star almost. So this very likely could be the samurai's holder. Like his holder is just like a moon, which makes sense because things just keep getting grander and grander as this series goes on. So it makes sense that we're going to see somebody with a holder like the size of a friggin' moon. So then we see two shadowed figures, and I'm assuming that the smaller of the two is the samurai in question here. The ultra powerful one who is holding the tournament, the one capable of slicing planets in half. And then the big bull thing, I'm guessing, is his key holder. While the moon is going to be like his primary holder, he's going to have the smaller primary key holder. Similar to what Daruma has, with the giant sea turtle and the smaller wolf one that he has. And it seems like he has like a club type thing, or maybe it's much more than that. But very different, very stocky, like ogreish in a way, different from what we've seen so far, especially with samurai type characters. So then he's like, for this battle royale, who shall we have for the opener? And we see him walk into this room with like these two huge boxes full of samurai keys. So I'm assuming that these are all of the opponents that have been in the tournament in previous years and have been defeated, but he decided to just keep their keys kind of like hostages or just tools in a way. Prisoners, but I guess they're not aware of it because I assume that when the samurais go into their stasis, when they're just their keys and they don't have a vessel, I don't think they're like conscious during this point. It's probably like being asleep almost without dreaming possibly. And this also confirms what we've been talking about throughout these previous chapters. It's like, if the key is still intact, even though they don't have a vessel, as long as you put that key back into like a locker ball or something like that, they will just come back to life and they'll just be normal again. So that means like characters like Ronin from Chapter 1, they could come back in theory because we know that his key is still intact. I mean, granted, it's back on the planet as far as we know. Maybe Daruma brought it with him, but that's just another, thing to look out for. But also, we've seen that Atta just completely diced up Mujin's key after he defeated him. It's like, there's no way you're coming back at this point. So if anyone was curious, like the immortal Mujin, the guardian samurai of Hachimaru's planet, he's not coming back because his key got diced up. So yeah, so I guess these guys are just going to be like the designated opponents for the newcomers that come to this tournament, because he's not just going to have like everyone essentially go against each other. He's going to have them go against previous people that have been in the tournament. It's kind of like the gladiators in a way. This is like a spacey take on it, I suppose, which is pretty cool. So then we're getting some awesome development between Daruma, Hachimaru, An, and Kotsuga and Ryuu. And at this point, it really seems like they're going to be a important part of the cast. Now, I don't know if they're going to be a permanent part. Maybe they're just going to be around for this arc, but I hope they stick around because they're awesome. They're definitely much needed because, we are kind of bare right now with the amount of characters that we have. So we need some supplementation, and Kotsuga is that perfect bit of like bite, cynicism, and comedy, as well as Ryuu too in his own way, but he's bringing the awesome power dynamic because they were kind of just relying on Daruma at this point to be the powerhouse, because Hachimaru, while he is very cool, still pretty weak at this point in the series. He is very effective, don't get me wrong, but still very raw, very green. So it's good that we have Ryuu to supplement the power dynamic here. Now, it's not confirmed, of course, that they're just complete allies at this point and then everything's hunky-dory. They still could just turn on a dime and be villains and then screw everyone over, or maybe even try to take them out eventually. But at this point, things are looking good. Now, maybe not so much for Kotsuga, but definitely Ryuu. I think Ryuu's going to stick around at least for the rest of this arc and be an ally. And also, let's just put it out there, I think we're all thinking it. Ryuu is probably one of the key samurais that they need to open Pandora's box. Kind of makes sense because of the whole big thing that was set up 2 chapters back. how Daruma kept explaining that Hachimaru has a extremely powerful pull to him, for the other keys coming to him, or him just simply finding the keys. So it kind of makes sense that Ryuu came to him, considering that there's this like inherent otherworldly attraction that he has. Now granted, Kotsuga was the one that found them, but Kotsuga found Ryuu, and then we don't really know the details of how they came to just straight up find Daruma's holder, but it's all kind of lining up here. But while we're on Ryuu and Kotsuga, while we're not finding out much about Kotsuga other than he's not a samurai, which we kind of expected in the previous chapter, he's just a standard warrior and Daruma deems him weak. How weak is he? Well, it remains to be seen. He'll probably fight in the tournament maybe, and we'll see what he's really made of. I'm sure that he has some tricks up his sleeve. But as for Ryuu, we're finding out that he is just, the typical amnesia dude, but there's not really much more to that. Now, I thought that there was going to be, like, more of a backstory to him and Kotsuga, but no. Kotsuga just straight up found him and then took him under his wing, and then that's about it. And Ryuu, I guess he's kind of like has like a Born Identity type dynamic to him right here, because he obviously doesn't know anything. It's not just amnesia. He's like just kind of like super naive about everything and just lacks basic fundamentals, but he's still ultra powerful and has a keen sense on battle tactics, fight IQ. Like, we see his intelligence come out when he's fighting Hachimaru here. So he still understands all of that completely. But we're also getting some super interesting commentary from Daruma about Ryuu. And he says, the transformation and fusion of samurai souls, the only one capable of these are ... And then he doesn't answer. So I'm assuming that he's probably talking about one of the 4 styles that we haven't seen yet. Because we've seen the Kongo Yasha, the Vajrayana style that Daruma and Hachimaru use, and then we saw the Ushusama style that Ata uses, and then there's 2 others that, as far as I know, we haven't been introduced to yet. So maybe Ryuu is one of those styles, and that their like trademark thing is that they use multiple souls and combine them. Because he's actually the first one that we've seen do stuff like that, like the Darth Maul type stuff that he was doing, and the scythe thing, and combining them to make a longer blade. It's all unique, cool stuff. Like, not even Ata was doing stuff like that. Now, I'm sure he can do whatever he wants, essentially, because we know Ata, we've only seen the surface of his power. We've only seen like 1/10 of it, maybe even less of that. But I'm assuming that this is like a different style that's not a part of the 2 main ones that we've seen so far. And then we go into this awesome little training sequence where Hachimaru takes on Ryuu, and I think this is further showing that they're likely going to be allies for a good portion of this arc, if not the entire arc, maybe even the rest of the series, because this is like real friendly. There's camaraderie being built here, there's character development, and while Kotsuga is being Kotsuga and being like real, in a certain type of way towards An, and he's being like real disrespectful and indignant towards everything, Ryuu on the other hand seems to be building, like I said, some kind of camaraderie with Hachimaru. But that being said, he completely dominates Hachimaru as we expected, and the first sequence, the very first point that he lands on him, it just instantly straight through his head. Very cool. I mean, this whole fight is just very well done. I'm sure you guys feel the same way. The choreography is really cool. Typical Kishimoto stuff, and considering what we've seen with, how Kishimoto's choreography translates to the anime, this sequence in particular is going to be exceptional in the anime. I mean, everything we've seen before, with Ata and all that stuff, that's going to be awesome, but this is really going to look good. Like Rock Lee versus Gaara type stuff, I'm assuming. So after getting thoroughly dominated for 32 rounds in a row, Hachimaru starts to, pick up his rhythm and starts doing some crazy stuff. Non-shonen MC stuff, typically. I mean, we've seen other characters, like, kind of mutilate themselves, but never to this degree, and that's because, of course, they didn't have the power dynamic that samurais do, but he straight up throws a swing at Ryuu and then lobs his arm off and sends it at him like a projectile, which is awesome. And this is typical because we've seen Hachimaru do this in Chapter 2, and we also saw Daruma in his human form do this in Chapter 1. So this is standard stuff, and it's, like I said, pretty unique, pretty interesting that they're just going this far to do it, and it's like, why not? There's really no consequences, as we've seen, to the samurais taking damage here. And it's also revealed that Hachimaru is exceptional, more or less, at regenerating, which is pretty cool. So he has that going for him. He's not, completely weakened. He has more inherent, traits to him rather than just the attraction. It seems like he has a strong inherent regeneration factor as well. But not only is he lobbing his arm like a projectile, at Ryuu here, but in order to avoid the strike from Ryuu, he lobs his own head off just so he could dodge Ryuu hitting him. And this is just solely for the purpose of winning this game, this training match that they're doing. But I suppose that something like this can come into play in a practical fight, life and death. He can do something like this to avoid something that will be cataclysmic to him, something that will actually have some serious consequences, because we do know that there are attacks and stuff that, like, samurais can't come back from. We've seen that already. So cutting your own head off temporarily, like a true savage, to avoid it being cut off permanently, seems like a fair trade and a pretty smart tactic here, which is awesome. Like, this is all pretty unique stuff, like I've been saying, pretty original. I mean, we've seen shonen MCs do stuff to harm themselves in order to win, but as far as I can remember, never to this extent. And it's so cool. And that brings us to the end of the chapter where this works out for Hachimaru, and he like slices Ryuu's cheek and finally gets 1 point on him. And we actually see like the sword just go right next to Kotsuga's face, and it like shocks him. This could have straight up killed Kotsuga if it was like 2 inches over, because he's not a samurai, so he's not going to be coming back from that, which is hilarious. But this was awesome. I really like this chapter, and I can't wait to see what happens with this tournament. I've been looking forward to the first tournament arc of this series, and we all know it was coming, and I'm looking forward to it so much. So let me know what you thought about this chapter. Where do you see Ryuu and Kotsuga going in this storyline? What do you think is going to happen in the tournament? If you liked it, please give it a like. And I also have a Patreon that gives you access to a weekly Q&A. And if you haven't already, please subscribe as well. Have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.